Hello friends, how are you all? I hope you all are doing good. So today let us know in detail what Jimmy has to say about Ezra Pound's long poetry, that is Hugh Mauberley, which in turn is the part of his magnum opus, that is the cantos, which further is divided into two parts, that is Canto 1 and Canto 17. Okay, so before starting, let us understand the life and works of Ezra Pound. Now, Ezra Pound was born in Haley, Idaho, to parents who had ancestors in the American Northeast and in the American West. They moved to Philadelphia when Pound was a few years old and his father worked in the mint. Pound studied in the University of Pennsylvania, that is English literature, American history and the Greek and Roman classics before moving to Hamilton College, where he took up Old English and Romance literatures. He graduated from Hamilton in 1905, returned to Pennsylvania for an MA the next year and entered academics. He was dismissed from the first position at Wabash College, Indiana, for sheltering an unemployed burlesque queen. This dismissal made him leave his native America for Venice and London, but did not make him abandon his academic career. He taught medieval and Renaissance literature at the London Regent Street Polytechnic between 1908 and 9 while trying to make his mark as a poet. His translations and scholarly works appeared in The Spirit of Romance, that is in 1910. His first verse collection was A Leon's Pento, that is in 1908, published in Venice. Two others, A Quinzaine for this Yule, published in 1908, and Personae, published in 1909, appeared in London. In 1914, he married Dorothy Shakespeare, who was to be the mother of his only son. Hand in hand with these publications went teaching and the writing of influential critical essays, which are pretty famous. So now let us understand the background and critical appreciation of his magnum opus, that is Hugh Mauberley. Now this poem was published in 1920 when Pound was just about to leave London and was already at work on his ambitious cantos. This poem too is quite ambitious. It seeks to measure the variety of social, economical and cultural ills in England that threaten poetic talent and force poets to become either frivolous or escapist. The poem also questions the whole meter of being a poet and is quite clear-eyed about the limited efficacy of this vocation. F.R. Lewis has emphasized Pound's wit, especially in Hugh Mauberley. He finds the verses extraordinarily subtle, says that critical activity accompanies feeling, finds the poem serious and light at the same time, sardonic and poignant, flippant and intense. Mauberley, he concludes, is a great poem. Pound said that the poem was modeled on the technique used by Henry James in his fiction. It presents his subject through the medium of character's mind or voice, a center of consciousness which assesses the subject in question. In this poem, the first 13 lyrics are presented through EP, a character with whom Pound has much in common besides the initials by way of artistic tastes and ambitions, but who should not be simplistically equated with the poet himself. The London cultural scene is surveyed through the eyes of EP. The tone verges on futility until the section entitled Envoy, where the voice sounds more passionate. In the next section, entitled Mauberley, EP is absorbed into the persona of fictitious poet Mauberley. Poet's attitude is slightly mocking here, but his attempt to infuse poetry with new life continues unabated. Pound attempts to rid his poetry of its tendency towards nostalgia and isolation and his belief in the perfect form. All these, he feels, threaten to turn his poetry to an aesthetic, over-poeted series of intermittences. Admitting these limitations, Pound manages partially to overcome them in the highly charged last section, that is Medallion, wherein he quotes from Catherine's French poetry, that is Quest, in which he says, "What do they know of love, and what can they understand if they do not understand poetry, if they do not respond to music? What can they understand of this passion in comparison to which the rose is cross and the perfume of violets a clap of thunder?" This is the translation of the words in French, which Pound presents as a sort of quotation. There are a number of things to keep in mind while reading this masterpiece by Pound. The poem is in the form of dramatic monologue, a form which Pound borrowed from Robert Browning and then later adapted. In Browning, the monologue is used as if the speaker and not the poet is speaking, but speaking in such a way that we can see him or her in an objective light. Like we see in The Last Duchess, we cannot but be horrified at the speaker's cold-hearted murder of his wife because she smiled too much. However, the speaker himself remains unaffected. In Pound's hand, the form becomes more personal. The figure from the past and the poet himself become so entwined that the figure ends up being a persona or a mask for the poet himself. Browning's dramatic monologue becomes in Pound's hands and, in his own words, a dramatic lyric. He defines this, the poetic part of a drama, the rest of which is left to the reader's imagination or employed or set in short note. It also becomes a tour de force reworking of history. The person chosen is usually a poet, and in the patchwork reconstruction of his life appear snatches of his poetry, his journal entries and fragments of the documents in which the speaker's life is recorded. It means the persona thus became for Pound an important means of communicating in a plurality of voices and of exploring the Western tradition and incorporating necessary parts of it to fabricate a voice suitable for modern poetry. His admirable control over colloquial speech and his mastery over the sculpture of rhyme are evident in the lines like those describing the affluent Mr. Nixon in the cream of glided cabin of his steam yacht, advising the poet to butter reviews from 50 to 300 I rose to 18 months. Okay, So we see the mix of the scholarly and the colloquial is also asserting. We glide from the oh-so contemporary Mr. Nixon to Greek Aphrodite and Homer's Penelope and back again. At times, of course, Pound's relentless and intentionally teasing erudition, he believes, is tossing out jigsaw fragments of the Greek epics, Ovid, Florentine art, can become tiresome. What Pound later called his attempted to break the pentameter or the traditional 5 root of English and American poetry is evident in the way he avoids writing lines to the same length, break lines with unexpected caesura, and avoids the monotonous regularity of 50 swords on alternate syllables by variations in cadence, tone, and rhyme. It is in this discipline, in this craft, that avoids the sharp contrast of Hugh Selwyn Mauberley from becoming melodramatic. The tone of subtle irony is maintained throughout. Pound's innovations greatly influenced later modern poets and disciples such as T.S. Eliot. So this was it, friends. If you liked the videos, kindly hit to the like and subscribe icons. Thank you.